Welcome to Chat with Leaders. I'm today's host, Jeff Baum with AppBerry, where we build custom web and mobile apps. And I'm proud to welcome a phenomenal leadership development advisor and executive coach in the Metro Atlanta market, Beth Miller. Beth, welcome to Chat with Leaders.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. I've been looking forward to talking to you this morning.
I really have as well. And I've had such good conversations with you before, and you're an inspiration. And this show is intended to be a platform to give inspiring leaders an opportunity to share those things that are inspiring them, the challenges that they're tackling in this current time, and how they're doing that and forging ahead faithfully. It's a time where we're dealing with a lot of issues with COVID-19 and shutdown. And so it's a great time to be talking about leadership. So just to get started, Beth, can you give me a little bit about your background and what brought you into a leadership advisor type of capacity?
Yes, it's been a very long journey, but I actually got into leadership development about 14 years ago through Vistage, which is a CEO membership organization for small business owners. Prior to that, I'd worked with big corporations and also led a technology consulting firm with my husband, which we did for about 10 years. So once we sold, we had to take a little time to figure out, okay, what are our next steps? And for me, it wasn't retirement. I got bored very quickly. And that's how I found Vistage. And Vistage was a great opportunity for me to work with small to mid-sized business owners and help them kind of get to the next level.
Well, leadership development is certainly a passion of this show, and we're so thankful that you're taking your expertise and pouring into other leaders, because as we develop leaders that can develop organizations, we can all get better through that journey. So your life's purpose and your life's work is very meaningful, and we believe in that here at Chat with Leaders. Tell me a little bit more about how you're finding leaders to focus on improvement during this time of employee engagement and adopting virtual working environments. It's been a really challenging business environment. So what trends have you been seeing, and how have you been responding to them?
Yeah, there's what I've seen are two kind of scenarios. One is those individuals that are moving back into the workplace, and then there are those that still aren't. And the ones that still aren't are focused a lot on employee well-being. And what I mean by that is each individual employee is in a different scenario as it relates to working at home. You know, there's the single mom having to take care of kids and homeschool kids. There's the single individual who's all of a sudden stuck in what one person called the white collar prison, where it was nice, but you couldn't really leave. And then there's those individuals, those leaders who are having to prepare people to return. And there's a lot of fear there. There's many people who are having to start to think about going back to work, but how do you get them as a leader to feel comfortable and safe when they come back to work? So those are kind of the two things that I'm seeing.
Yeah, and this is uncharted territory, so who knows really how to speak to those fears, and it's a very real fear that a lot of us are facing, and even those that are in leadership, I'm sure, are cautious about how they reintroduce themselves and protecting their family's health and all that. So what are ways that you found leaders are actually able to stay connected with their employees and have that empathy and have that ability to really connect with those fears and those things that are real, while keeping their organizations moving forward positively?
I'm very fortunate that I'm working with a lot of really great leaders who have really stepped up and provided that care to individuals. Their emotional intelligence allows them to identify those individuals who are having more problems at home than others. And I actually was in a webinar recently where the research firm was talking about how employee engagement has actually increased over this period of time, which I found counterintuitive. But then as I started talking to a lot of leaders, they're spending a lot more time with the care and nurturing of employees first, and then moving to production and productivity versus pre-COVID, it often was the reverse. Let's get stuff done. And okay, oh, by the way, how are you doing?
Right.
So there's been a flip there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I felt like it's really introduced the human element of what we do. I think we all have personal lives. I know that we do, and we all have our work lives, and being able to kind of cross that boundary has been something we're forced into. There's no way out of it because we are dealing as parents. And I love what you said about white collar prison. That sounds like a really nice prison comparatively, but it's still a prison that
Right.
I have felt personally with three young kids and
Yeah,
trying to balance
exactly.
things with my wife. And
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
but having leaders that are empathetic, that allow you to have your personal life, but also continue to have the expectations of your role. It's a fine line, but I think that I've seen more positive leaders directing that than those on the alternative. But I have heard of people saying that they have Zoom fatigue, and that they're kind
Yes.
of over agendized on all these Zoom calls, and maybe there's too many. So, what advice would you have for leaders that are maybe trying to balance how many
Yeah.
Zoom calls they have versus
So
none?
I do
Yeah, I
see a
think
lot of Zoom fatigue. And the way that I see uh, leaders balancing is those individuals that are maybe having challenges, they definitely want to have those Zoom conversations because they want to see the visual cues. Um, and then as it relates to team meetings, they kind of balance it. There's those kind of social meetings that they're trying to do, cocktail hours, coffee clatches, those kinds of things would be on a Zoom. And then maybe like a team meeting that would be important for individuals to connect. But if it's kind of, hey, what do we need to do today? Those generally are the ones that really you could do a phone call.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
It's that visual cue that's really important. When do you need that, and when don't you really need that?
And I think that's where someone like you, a really good coach and advisor, can help leaders kind of balance that, because I can imagine having a big team and feeling obligated to continually have that connection, that social connection, without realizing that at the end you're kind of burning people out, and that maybe you're not giving enough productivity time to get work done and deep work versus being on meetings. And so having someone be able to direct them and guide them towards that healthy balance is
Yeah.
good. We talked a little bit about the various phases of COVID-19, and we're, I don't think, out of the response phase. I think we're still trying to figure out how we respond, but we talked about the recovery phase and probably the
Right.
long road ahead that we have of that. And we talked about the positive outcomes that maybe have resulted from this, learnings like increased employee engagement. How do we evaluate now why and how they are effective, and then apply them as we continue to grow the economy and move our businesses forward into those recovery phases?
Yeah, I think part of it is one of the things great leaders do is self-reflect, and to spend some time self-reflecting on, what have you learned through this process? Not and not so much about the productivity operations, but about you and who you are as a leader, and how have you shown up with your team members, and has that been different, and if so, is this something that you want to maintain moving forward? Has this something that's benefited you? So I would suggest that self-reflection as a leader, to spend some time asking yourself those kind of questions. The other is to get asked feedback from others. That's too often leaders spend their time providing feedback to their team members, but they don't ask for feedback. And it's really valuable because what you think somebody may need may be entirely different. Leaders leaders feel like they need to solve problems and have all the solutions. And the fact of the matter is nobody does. And if you spend some time asking for feedback, especially as it relates to where we are, that, okay, the question of how are you doing? Well, is that a really good question? More, what can I be doing differently to support you?
Right.
That's a more powerful question. Yeah. So asking for feedback would be the other thing.
That's great advice. And certainly for anyone listening, rewind back and listen to that question again. What can I be doing to help you? And, oftentimes that'll result in them maybe saying something about themselves that they could really use help with. And it sparks the right kind of tone in the conversation. You had shared a book the other day on social media, I believe, around emotional intelligence 2.0. And I love your focus on emotional intelligence and self-awareness and social awareness. And that's so important for leaders to have, and having the vulnerability to ask those questions of what can I be doing better and how can I self-reflect? Because if you can't measure the things that are going well as much as you are measuring the things that aren't going well, you'll never
Right.
be able to find yourself in that, pattern of good success. And so great advice there. Last point, we talked the other day about succession planning and the importance of it. None of our lives are infinite, and so I always say we're keeping our seats warm for the next person. And you're great at helping leaders develop their succession plans. So how can we best equip leaders to think in those terms? And when do you start with succession planning?
It's never too soon. Succession planning should actually be an ongoing go on an ongoing basis annually, and it should be integrated with your business and strategy plan. So you should be looking at, okay, if my organization needs to grow, 20% in the next year, well, how are we going to get there? What other positions? What does the organization need to look like? So it's identifying, first of all, what positions are missing, and then looking at all those key positions, those positions that if the person that is in it walks away, and you're going to be significantly impacted. That's a key position. And who do you have that can step into that role?
Right.
Well, if you aren't planning for that, then you can't have the right person in the right seat at the right time, doing the right things. So succession planning is getting all of that right.
And sometimes we don't have a choice. Sometimes it isn't stepping away. Sometimes it's that unforeseen circumstance, and you want to be a steward of the people that are in your business that are relying on that job to carry on. And so that succession planning, I love what you said about it's never too soon. I've heard others say, start the day that you start, identify someone that could potentially be your successor and start grooming them from day one. So really good advice. I could talk to you all day, Beth. We try to be a good steward of our listeners' time. So we're coming up on our end here. Is there a call to action that you would have for leaders to consider as they continue to navigate from response to recovery in COVID-19?
I think that the real call to action is that self-reflection and asking for feedback. I think those would be the two things that leaders should be doing right now to help navigate into that recovery phase.
Love it. And how would people get a hold of you via social media, email, website to learn more?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me by Beth Armknecht Miller, which is my maiden name, and that's ARMKNECHT. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can also contact me through my website, which is www.executive-velocity.com.
Please do. As you get better as a leader, everybody gets better. And we'll certainly be posting this episode to our website, as well as all of our podcast channels through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you consume yours. If you have any suggestions on how we can improve the show, you can email myself, Tim, Chris at info@chatwithleaders.com, or connect with us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we're now on Instagram @chatwithleaders. So thank you so much for being with us today, Beth. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
Well, I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.